We are almost halfway through The Acolyte at this point, and this is probably better suited for a next week episode, but I feel like at this point, we can maybe do an episode where we say, where is the Acolyte going? So we've been on a hiatus for a week or so. I had a busy week last week. I had a baby, or actually, my wife had a baby last week. I did not, but my wife did. So it's been a crazy week, but we're back. We had some Acolyte to watch, so I think we should lump the first three into this episode. And then, what do we like about it? Stuff like that. What do we not like? And then where are we going from here? Because unless you're living under a rock, episode three is kind of polarizing for some people for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good point to stop and look and see kind of, okay, what's our story so far and what are they going to do about it? So I think 3 episodes is a fine spot for that. I don't want to wait a week for it. So if you're new here, I'm Will with the Padawan Pops channel. This is my friend and co-host Kevin, and we like to talk Star Wars. So, Kevin, first of all, for The Acolyte, I know like the first 2 episodes, I guess it was 2 together, right? So it was the first 2 released at the same time, and then 3 was this past week. So, how was your viewing experience for the first 2?
First two watched it as soon as
Yeah,
so it was fine. So I had a chance to sit down and talk about it.
yeah,
A lot of time I think about episode 22. We were camping this week, so I didn't get to watch. What is today? Thursday.
it's Thursday. Yeah,
I didn't watch until very late last night, so I'm still fresh on episode 3. You know me, I'm compulsive about taking my notes, so I don't forget
yeah,
things. So I'm just kind of, I haven't had time to really process, but
yeah,
I've really enjoyed the show so far. A lot of stuff that's been said by other people. I mean, it feels like Star Wars, but it feels very prequel to Star Wars. Like it feels like there's a lot of
yes,
those connections to specifically the Phantom Menace. And so yeah, I like the vibe of it. The mystery part of it is really good.
hmm
From what I've seen, I feel like people who are giving it a chance are pleased with
yep,
different parts of it.
yep.
Acting's been really good. There's been some really cool lines of dialogue and connecting pieces all throughout the first 3 episodes. And yeah, man, a big shout out to those of you who tried the show and didn't like it and
Yes,
know how to be civil about it.
for
Because
sure.
man, holy cow!
Whew,
Um,
whew.
I think there's a group who they wrote their review 3 months ago and they're sticking to the notes, and so
Yeah, or
it is
longer.
what it is. It's fine.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's been a fun
yeah,
Star Wars show, and there's if you take the time to really look at some of the background stuff, what's going on, you can find a lot of connecting pieces to other Star Wars lore,
mm.
specifically some of the
A
prequel stuff.
lot of
So
lore.
a lot, yeah. So that's been really cool and really fun to just kind of think about and speculate about all those connections. So I'm enjoying it. I enjoy a show that makes you stop and have to kind of break down everything that's happening. This 3rd episode has really magnified that, I think. Um,
Yeah,
Overall, I didn't think 3rd episode was as good as the first 2, but I think it served its purpose in giving you some background to this big event, but without really giving
yeah,
enough to see the whole picture. There's a lot still on the table that we don't know. Um,
yeah.
so but I'm enjoying the show
No,
so far. I'm into it.
I'm with you on that. So, like, my viewing experience. So, um, we had a baby the day that the Acolyte came out. So, obviously, I did not watch at 9 p.m.
Yeah,
that day, but it was my shift around like midnight to 2 a.m. ish with a wake baby. So, watched the Acolyte on my iPad while holding a baby. So that was yeah. So I will sentimentally think back on those episodes probably forever.
yeah,
But
that's true. That's good. Yeah,
had to watch it with subtitles though. So, but
I watch everything with subtitles now anyway. So
well, yeah, I'm not quite there yet. So did that though. Did that, and that first episode, I like two. I like the second episode best out of all of them. I'll say that. But the first episode to me, because I came in with it like gonna give it a chance, really excited about the possibility of it. We talked about it. Like I'm not one of the people who has been like, "This is trash. Leslie Headland is the worst human ever." Stuff like that. Like I'm not one of those people, and that's my impersonation of people that think that. But um, they sound that way. No, it's okay if you think that. Just don't be hateful. But I felt like it was Star Wars. You know, like you watch some Star Wars things. Like I like Andor, and during this paternity maternity leave that we're both on right now, we're watching Andor again. So like we're just kind of binge watching a bunch of stuff, and like when you turn on Andor, it's great. But like the dude's in a brothel and he's shooting people in an alley. That doesn't feel like Star Wars, right? But it's a cool show. Well, this show felt like Star Wars. Like when you turned it on, it was, very Star Warsy, and it's hard to describe, what that feels like because it can feel that way for different people. Like Master Soul, man, what a high point in all of Disney Star Wars. Like people are like Disney's the worst for Star Wars or whatever. If they don't drop the ball on his character, he's a top 10 Star Wars character for me. Now there's still more episodes. He could go the wrong way, but I love his character. The guy learned English for this role, like specifically for this role. I mean, it's so good. The twin thing is kind of like an old TV trope. They do it on what's the not Knives Out, but the second one, Glass Onion. Right there's twins. Yeah, and so like that's just like, oh, there was twins. That's the big twist. But we kind of knew that already because of the press release or whatever. So I didn't mind the whole twins thing, and Star Wars is kind of predicated on the story of twins. So it feels Star Warsy there. You get Coruscant there. Like there's just a lot of good to it. I thought they did really good starting off with the character development. You start off with action in that first episode. Who would have thought Trinity would die in 5 minutes? I mean, how crazy was that? Which we're gonna see a lot of her throughout because of the flashbacks. But like the show doesn't waste time. Some like my wife hates the first episode of The Mandalorian because it's not the greatest episode, right? Like it's the pacing's a little clunky sometimes. It's very westernish, but then by the end of it it's picked up. This show just jumped right in like, hey, there's someone murdering Jedi. Oh, there she is. She just killed one. And then it goes all the way and you get more into like, okay, well there's a twin and Master Soul's got to find one, and it really builds. So I thought it was a great start. Episode 2 I thought was really good. Really liked episode 2 with is it the what's the vow called that the guy took? Vow or something like that. And that's a very lore heavy thing. Like yeah. So like I had to look up what that was, but it's in stuff. And so that was cool. Kamir, I think he's the Sith. We'll get into that later maybe, but I think it's him. And yeah, they kind of drop some hints. So I like that one a lot. You get to see Kelnaka at the end of that one, which was cool. Like, she's going after him next. And then episode 3, I didn't care for it as much. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't very exciting for me. Like, it was kind of slow. There wasn't much in that episode that we didn't already know. So like Soul and explains it in a few sentences what happens in episode 3. He explains it in episode 2. Like we do learn some extra details that some people are kind of mad about, but to me, I'm not huge about an origin story, and we'll talk more about 3 in detail, but I think it's just that I don't care for origin stories so much. And as soon as we get into it, I go, oh, this is what this is. So maybe that's a little bit on me, but it wasn't the most exciting episode.
It was a necessity, necessarily. First 2 episodes, they referred back to this incident, referred back to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where
Yep.
so all of that was set up.
Yeah, not filler. It's legit stuff.
Yeah. But I feel like that's all you could really do in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
to move back into how does that affect things going forward. That's kind of what we're all speculating. So the episode really
Yeah.
was just, hey, let's this.
Yeah.
Even then, we don't even really know what exactly.
We don't yet.
We get
Mm-hmm. A one-sided version too.
it is. Yeah. So it obviously I think that's the goal, right? So we
Yeah.
speculation about what actually transpired in the last 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the type of show this is, right? Like
Yeah.
I like that we're 3 episodes in and they've already shown us a lot, right? We've had two of the masters now.
Yeah, there are, half of them are gone. Yeah.
We've had two of them. We've already got one of the big flashback sequences, and yet we still don't know a lot.
Yeah.
Still, what took place with this group of Jedi. So
Yeah.
I like that they're explaining some things without giving away history. So,
That Sith guy, I'm gonna backtrack, but and first of all, look, we have a short out speculating who the Sith guy is. Go it in the comments if your urge is to say, "How do you know it's a guy?" Whatever. Okay, think it to yourself and laugh and move on. I think it's a guy, so I'm just gonna say that because May says it's a guy and Kamir says it's a guy. So if you got to make a joke or think you're sharp, you're not sharp. Go on, but the Sith guy is what we're going to refer to him as. When he has that little monologue talking to May, we assume, right? When she shows up at the end of episode 1, and he's like talking about the Jedi living a dream or whatever. That's so good because when we get to the prequel trilogy, they are living in this quote unquote dream, right? Like they think things are rosy, and then Darth Maul and Palpatine show up. And then, okay, they still think they're kind of in this dream. They're just going to take out the Sith and everything's going to be okay. And so this is kind of the start of unraveling the Jedi dream. And when he at the end of it says an acolyte kills the dream, I thought that was just such a cool line. Like I don't know, like one of the corniest lines in Star Wars is when Saw Gerrera is like something about the dream in Rogue One. Like I hate that line. And then I thought this was just the coolest thing when it's like, it's gonna kill the dream, which was like kind of I don't know if she kind of thought about that from where Saw Gerrera is like save the dream or whatever, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some really cool lines that really do point to kind of this break in the Jedi Order and the issues that we're seeing. One like because Kymir also he has that line when he's talking to May, where he seems pretty insightful about the Jedi. He's talking about how
Yeah.
they kind of have this ideal of peace in the galaxy, and they have this front of peace, but they can't really find peace, right? So kind of noting like the hypocrisy of the Jedi and that they're all about the ideal and the appearance of peace. They don't actually have peace.
Yep.
And that obviously plays a huge part in what we're seeing with some of these stories. And going back to when we did our prediction show, talking about how Leslie Headland was talking about balance, right? And the idea that within a person there's good and there's bad, and so it's really interesting to see that concept playing out so far, because like you look at Indara, when May shows up, the guy immediately knows she's like at the bar, right? Yeah, that's where our Jedi is. She's at the bar.
Yeah,
it
our
seems
resident
like she
Jedi
hangs out there every day, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not told that she's in there drinking her problems away, but if you know exactly
seems that way though,
is at the bar sitting in a shady corner with other people, that's where you spend your time.
Yeah.
That's why I wish people would stop and think. Like, people are like, well, how did she get in there and kill a master? Well, she's probably not sober right now. Like, this acolyte is coming in and taking advantage of these Jedi not dealing with their problems, right? Like, that having this front of peace, but with I think my internet.
You're back.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm outside, so
no, you're good.
Stay stable.
Yeah, Kevin, by the way, if you're watching this, Kevin is like recording this on a camping vacation, and I probably have a newborn screaming in the background. So this is probably not the greatest audio you're going to have, but We appreciate you
I'm
hanging around.
actually we got into my parents' house. So that's where I'm at right now.
Ah, gotcha.
Um, that's why I have internet. But no, so but this May is taking advantage of these Jedi having
Yeah.
these issues they haven't dealt with, right? Like as Jedi, they're
Hmm.
supposed to be at peace, right? They're supposed to have balance in themselves, and they obviously don't. And
Control and
obviously ties back to whatever this past event was.
in episode
Um,
3, yeah.
yeah, and I think like Master Torben, like I think it's so crazy that he has gone into this state, this vow, for over 10 years because of how much whatever they did bothers him, to the point where he's willing to. He's like, "Yep, I'll die for your forgiveness," right? Like that's some serious events haunting
Yep.
you, and so
Yeah.
she's fully taking advantage of the fact that these Jedi are not at peace, right? They are not
Yeah.
balanced. And it totally plays into what Kymir said, right? That they can't find peace themselves, but they're going to hold up the illusion of peace. Which,
Yes.
I mean, that's the Jedi we find, right? When we get into the prequel movies, and they get Anakin Skywalker, and they're just so scared of what he could be. They
Yeah.
got to uphold the image of we got to keep things together. Like we're not going to handle the underlying issues that people have. We're just going to make
Yeah.
sure that things look like they're under control.
Yeah. I
And so
almost
I
think
love that
like,
it's tying into that and building up that
yeah.
narrative. I think it's really cool.
Well, I feel like, like, we're only 3 episodes in, but I want to say this whole little when I say episode, I mean like this episode of the happenings, like all of this season.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna almost be like a microcosm of the prequel trilogy. So you've got a small group of Jedi who are, do something doesn't go right, okay? And so like they get sucked into this dilemma. So the prequel trilogy, the Jedi essentially turn into soldiers, right? They get sucked into this dilemma for political power.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Jedi, which, I mean, they've been stealing kids forever, and so like they're doing it here as well. That's what they're doing on this planet. They're there to steal 2 kids. And so
Yeah.
something goes wrong, and their morals are probably compromised a little bit, similar to what goes on in the Clone Wars for the whole whatever. And then you see it come to a head in episode 3. I feel like this is going to kind of foreshadow the greater fall that's coming. So the Jedi are not going to come out of this whole situation rosy. Like some bad stuff had to have happened, right? So Torben, like you said, he's like still feels guilty about whatever happened. Well, I don't think the Jedi is going to feel guilty about doing nothing wrong. So you got something going on there. Kilnaka's sequestered himself off on another planet. Soul seems to be the only one still hanging around, like the temple. So
Yeah. And
like
he has
something
that
bad happened.
like things are falling off my computer here. I got things journeying today. Well, yeah, because we also haven't seen that scene yet where they appear to be fighting each other.
Right, that's got to come too, because they're
That's
gonna
got to come at some point. But
yeah,
Soul
they're
has
gonna
that
kind of
conversation.
reevaluate this.
Yeah.
Like, now the Last Jedi is like not everyone's favorite Star Wars movie, certainly not mine. But like, you know how you get Luke and Kylo, or Luke and Ben Solo's story, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when Luke goes to confront him that night,
Yeah.
and you get 2 sides of it, and both sides are wrong.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Ben Solo saw it from one way, but Luke was seeing it from another, and both sides were right and both sides were wrong at the same time. Like Luke was there to kill him, but he stops. Well, Kylo Ren only sees the hey, Luke was there to kill me
Yeah.
type thing. And so and that's a big part of that story. And I think
Yeah.
this night we saw Osha. We saw her version of it. So we only see what happens with her, and then we're going to see what happens on the other side of it at some point. And while Osha's side is probably a true account of what happened, there's more to it. Like May's side is probably also going to be true for her. Like she saw bad things and that caused her to go one way. So while I didn't care for the episode as much, it's my least favorite of the 3. Over the course of time, it probably will still be an important episode.
Yeah. No, I I definitely think one of the Jedi killed Anastasia.
Yeah.
Because that's when May
I think it'll be
gets.
Torben.
There's some interesting stuff. I do too. So I don't know if when in the present, when he's in his little vow thing, he has that big scar on his eye. And if you
And it's on
notice,
it in
right,
the ship
when
too.
Osha wakes up, like he's got some blood
Yeah.
and like a cut right there.
That's from Kelnaka, I think.
So something happened, right? We don't get to see what that is, but I think it could have been him. You know, he's obviously, after they did that weird possession thing to him, he seems pretty bothered by it, right? Like
He's
he's a
not,
little
yeah,
bit
he's not
shaken.
quite right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like May, there's some interesting stuff in that because there's that scene where they're Anastasia is given that lecture about the thread and the force and all that stuff,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
stop because they hear something and they all turn around and it's that like power generator thing that's hanging from the
Yeah, it's like
ceiling. They
it
thought they
makes
heard
like a
something.
big, yeah, clunky
Yeah,
noise.
there's
Yeah.
like a clanking noise, which is later explodes. So like I don't think the fire caused that. Like I feel like that thing had to have been sabotaged or something. I feel like the fire was a cover up. And I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
Like May's in like a weird
Or a
trance when she does
coincidence or
that.
something.
Which another interesting thing, if you go back to the first episode when Osha crashes on what is it, Karlak, the ice world, is that what it's
Yes.
called?
Yes.
And she's following her, seeing May. Like
May,
briefly,
yeah.
May has her eyes go black, like the same way
Dark,
that
yeah, that's kind of
Torben's
creepy,
did.
yeah.
Well, it was the same way that
Yeah.
Torben's did. Like, and so I don't know. It makes me wonder if she was under some other magic or
Connect, yeah.
something.
I think it's the
So I don't know. It's
Zabrak woman.
interesting. It could be because
I
she
I don't
is,
yeah.
listen, true to what we've seen with these witches. Like she is all about protecting the group, right? Like that's
Hmm.
been her biggest thing. We see that with the Night Sisters as well.
Yeah.
Like you are loyal to your sisters, you protect the group, and so I can see her being the impetus that is like, no, we're not we're not bowing down to these Jedi, right? Like we're
Yeah.
going out with a fight or something.
Well,
I don't know if that's the
Star
case, but
Wars,
there's something going on with her.
yeah. Well, Star Wars, the whole like all of Star Wars is yin and yang. That's all it ever is, right? Light side, dark side.
Yeah,
You've got Luke and Vader, you've got Kylo Ren and Rey, you've got May and Osha, you've got this Zabrak woman and Mother Anastasia, right? So they're like
yeah,
all of Star Wars. It's just a heads and a tails thing. So I think is that her name, Anastasia, right? That's the right
yeah.
name
Mother Anastasia, yeah,
for the head. Yeah, for the head
yeah,
witch. So she like is almost open to Osha going with the Jedi. She's like, yeah, we'll consider it. She's giving him ice
yeah.
cream at the beginning of the
She's
episode,
trying.
or spice cream, whatever they call it. Yeah. So, and then the other one, the Zabrak woman, is like kind of cold. She's kind of hostile, things like that. So I almost see that as
Yeah,
just another side of that coin with good and bad. And so when crap kind of hits the fan, which I think we're going to see, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to see her taking one route on how she would
right.
respond and Mother Anastasia going another route. And that's my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Like next week could prove that different. But I do think we need to know what happens in that window to kind of better
Yeah.
fill in the story, which we're going to get.
Well, and I think we can assume that May probably saw Anastasia die
All of
because
it.
that's like as soon as
Yeah.
she sees like Mama's dead, right? That's the first thing she
Yeah.
says. Um,
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see. It's interesting to
Yeah.
like why is Soul there? Like he shows up and rescues. Like they're already there.
He was chasing May, right? That he had to have been chasing May.
Yeah, I don't know, right? And I don't know if they followed them back to wait. Because they had their ship on the outskirts. I would have thought maybe they'd just hang out there, but they're back there for some reason.
Well, they were
So,
there to steal kids, so they were still going to
yeah,
get the kids.
no, they don't steal children. They said that. They,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me, right?
I love that they're building on that hypocrisy there, by the
Yeah,
way. Like, I mean, because that's like the elephant in the room of Star Wars.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, we don't steal kids, but you
Well,
do.
it's
Like, you
crazy.
do
Like,
steal kids.
and it's crazy because Indara's like, the Jedi. The Jedi have the right to test these kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
they have established, like, with the Republic, that they have the right to go test kids whenever they want to. Like,
Yeah.
that is such a like egotistical thing, right? For a group of people who are supposed to be humble guardians, like
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
you establish your right to go and do whatever you want. Like that's
In the
problematic.
name
No
of
one, no
peace.
wonder people hate you. No wonder these people
Yeah.
fear you.
Yep.
Um,
Again,
So
it's just that domino effect that what we get to in the prequels. This show is they could drop the ball, and we'll say it if they do.
it's true.
But I really think, like, depending on how many seasons of this we get, it's going to set us up in a prime spot for, like, how did these Jedi just completely miss this?
Yeah,
And this is just that slow trickle of how we get to that point. And again, that's why I think this is just a small picture of big things to come. Like, it's going to be a story that tells us a bigger story later on.
yeah.
Um, so where do you think this is going? Like, where do you think the story is going from here?
I I think I think Soul knows more than he has let on to Osha. Um,
Yeah,
I think definitely, but I think that's problematic because he drops that line in this episode where he's talking to her. He's like, if you want to be a Jedi, you got to be truthful, right? When she's not telling the right things that are on the screens, trying to fail the test.
yeah, that
So
was good. I like that scene.
he said, if you want to be a Jedi, you have to tell the truth. Um,
Yeah,
and that's a problematic line for this group of Jedi right now
that are not
because
telling the
it
truth.
doesn't seem like the truth has seen the light of day yet at this point.
And
I thought
they're
that
okay
was
with a cover up. They're okay with a
yeah,
cover up because when they
yeah.
talk, he talks to Vernestra in the first episode. She's like, "We got to keep this under wraps
Yeah,
because
because
it
they're
could
worried about
compromise our
the
political
political
power."
opponents, right? Like, yeah,
So
and
we
so he
already know
said,
they're cool with cover ups.
yeah. But at the same time, he also in that conversation with her, she says like, I know you, or he, I don't remember how the conversation goes, but about how he's moved past it, about how
Yeah.
he's gotten over it, because he had tried to help her get over it.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see if he really is at peace with it once maybe some of this stuff does see the light of day. Because
Yeah.
right now it seems like he's the only one who is, but does he really have peace with it? Is kind of a big question. See,
Yeah.
so I think that's where this is going. I think it's going to keep moving down this path of. I mean, Soul is obviously very different from the Jedi around him. People have obviously made comparisons with Qui-Gon, which are
Yeah.
very apt, right? They're very appropriate.
When the actor even said it, like he kind of
Yeah,
modeled him after Qui Gon.
which is one of the reasons I love the interplay between him and Yord, because in the prequel movies we kind of get a sense of how different Qui-Gon is, but
Yeah,
Yord being like this opposite of Soul that he travels with him, not as a Padawan, right, but somebody who is a
it's a
knight.
night. Yeah,
He's his own entity within the order at this point. Like to see how really different his mindset is versus Soul's, you get a better view of what it really looks like, and maybe how different Qui Gon was as well for the rest of the world. We get a lot of that in some
yeah,
of the literature that came
yep,
with Phantom Menace, but um, so I like that we get a good view of how significantly different Soul is just in thinking about things, pursuing things. This
yep.
idea that maybe he's still, in a lot of ways, still committed to the Force, right? Doing the right
Mm-hmm.
thing, choosing the light side of the Force, versus, well, what does the code say we're supposed to do? What does the council say we're supposed to do? What's protocol say we're
Yeah,
supposed to do? Um, he's
he
still
can think
not there
outside
yet,
that bubble.
right? And they should be, right? Because if as Jedi you're committed to the Force, right, and
Yeah,
balancing the Force, um, it doesn't seem like the best thing to do would be to create these codes and protocols that everybody has to abide by, and they can't act on any
regardless
sort
of
of
yeah,
like, I think this is right, or maybe this would be
yeah,
the best thing to do. So Soul still embodies that. So it's interesting to see him kind of oppose some of the other things that are being said, as well as how he teaches Jackie, kind of in some of the things that are being
yeah.
said. Um,
I love that
is good.
character. I mean, I didn't
She's been
think
really good so far.
in the
Yeah.
promos, I didn't know that she would be much of a character or not, but she's like fairly prominent. I mean, for a supporting cast or whatever. So I think she's
Oh,
funny, like
I
how she
love.
handles things.
I feel like this has got to be like a throwback to the sequels when she tells York to put his shirt on.
Put a shirt on like a
All I was
Kylo
thinking
Ren.
of, that's all I could think of. Is like, oh, they got to be
Yeah,
like
making fun of
referencing
that.
Kylo Ren right now. Yeah,
I
put your shirt on.
I don't know this
It's funny.
because I don't know anyone, but I can't imagine that Leslie Headland likes the sequels. I mean, just as much Star Wars as she knows, and how like she seemed, now people are super jazzed about a lot of things, but I feel like she takes the lore seriously. And I don't think J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson could find Star Wars lore if it was in a book on their desk that says Star Wars lore. And I don't think she would appreciate haphazard writing. And that's all the sequels was haphazard writing. Just my opinion. Yes.
But
Now her boss is also probably maybe helping her out, on some of that too, but she did her homework. Yeah. Yeah, we should probably touch on that. That's where the Sith come in.
what's going to immediately make the Jedi upset? Well, you think
There's
associated
a
with the Sith.
Sith. Yeah.
Those two things kind of seem to match up.
Yeah. Now that the whole like forced conception thing, I'm not huge about it, but at the same time, like I've read more, like some people that I really respect as far as Star Wars creators. Not Diamond Fig, that's not his name anymore. Will of the
Will of
Force
the Force.
is his new channel, so he's put some stuff out there that like kind of making it connect. Retney's Holocron, that's like a heavy lore channel. It's like some of his stuff's pretty good explaining it, and these are not like Disney shills. These are guys that will call a spade and will praise things that are good, and they know their Star Wars stuff, and like some connections between the Plagueis novel, the prequel trilogy, and other EU stuff that I may not be as familiar with. Like this can fit within it. Now, will they nail the landing? We don't know yet. But I think it can fit within the canon that we already have. Probably. I mean, my gosh, we've
And
got, this is the same canon, by the way, that has Palpatine not being dead in a zombie body. By the way, this is the same canon that we're like, oh, this can't make sense. Well, have you seen the canon lately? Like, I think this can fit.
yeah, but too, like there are things within the original and prequel movies that people swear by that are still left vague and ambiguous, right? That don't
Yep.
really have a solid answer. Anakin Skywalker, right? There hasn't really been like a great listen. This is why it happened. There's no like. There's been allusions to things and
Yeah.
the idea that it was balancing the force or stuff like that, but there's not anything
We don't know.
George put in there that to
Yeah.
clarify that because it was supposed to be vague. And so sometimes it's I mean it's okay if some of this stuff isn't also wrapped up into a perfect explanation. Um, I mean that's part of where the fun is, right? Is to sit down and when you talk about Star Wars, is try to connect pieces and
Yep.
speculate. Like, what fun is there if you just know everything and we sit down here together and we just recite everything that's been said in the movie, right? That's
It's fan fiction at
you
this
know.
point. And if people want
So
fan fiction, I got some news for you. Go get a journal and write some fan fiction. Like, I mean,
have
do
fun.
it and have fun doing it, but don't
Or
go, rain on
get on
everyone's
the internet and
parade
read.
for people trying to enjoy stuff, because it's okay to enjoy stuff or to just talk about stuff you don't enjoy. Like if there's like I'm not a huge fan of the whole forced conception thing. And also like I like Harry Potter and stuff, but like I fast forwarded through the creepy witchcraft part because it was kind of creepy. Like, and so I just kind of skipped a few minutes ahead in that and I didn't miss anything. So like there's things
Yeah,
that I
and
don't care about. And I'm also not going to other people's page and being like, you're an idiot for liking this. Like I can just I'm capable as a grown man to skip ahead a minute and keep watching. So yeah, I think that a lot of people are stupid, but I don't have to tell them. God, so strange, and it sounds like it would be like in like some kind of like horror book or story or something like that.
As weird as it was,
Well, the Force is big. Yep. Hmm. Here and there. Yeah. Well, even yeah. Well, in the Rise of Skywalker, when they're on Exegol and you see all those like statues and stuff, that's like old EU, like 1,000 years back Sith people, stuff like that too, like that are now canon because of just a random scene. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. Keep this in mind too. They're making a Force Origins film in a few years, so this isn't. I don't think all this is accidental, right? Like opening up what your thoughts of the Force maybe.
even just with
Yep. Different galaxy.
saying these witches and this
Yep. Yep. I want to know where they came from because they did mention in this episode or in episode three, like, we they had to leave or something like that, so they had to like find a new place to go. So I'm kind of interested in where they got ran off from, because they're all different species and stuff like that. So they're not all like from one place. So I'm interested maybe some more in that. It's not like a deal breaker for me, but I wouldn't mind knowing what's going on with that. Which which is a Palpatine line. And that's what he says in episode three. So that's a Palpatine line there that I think maybe like, and I didn't come up with it on my own. Like I've seen a lot of people posting that, like, unnatural. So you know, I'm still willing to give it a try. I do think where we go from here, I do think she's gonna get.
way off track.
You did. That's okay though. I think Kelnaka's not going to make it many more episodes as far as like in the present. I think she probably does get him next. But I do still think we have flashbacks like back to that night. So let's say we have one episode where she picks off Kelnaka, one episode of a flashback. That gets us to see, that would be 4 and 5. So that gives us 6, 7, and 8 left for them to figure things out. So at some point there's gonna have to be some friction with Soul and Osha, because again, Osha's going to have to figure out that things weren't exactly, and she's going to have to wrestle with that. So that could be the sixth episode, fifth, sixth, something like that. And then 7 and 8 are probably like, seven is the classic penultimate episode where it sets you up for a big battle, and then 8 will be, we we either figure out who the Sith is in 7 or 8, and then I doubt that he actually lives. I think it's Chimere because he makes like those references about. I mean, he says the Sith code. He talks like he knows who the Sith Lord is, right? He's like, oh yeah, he'll be happy for you and things like that. Like, so I don't know. It's like when Padme is doing like the where she's the decoy queen or whatever, and she's like, the queen would not approve of this, and she's the handmaiden saying this because she is the queen. So you've got Chimere saying, oh, he'll be happy about this. Well, what if he's like the bad Padme there? So I don't know. I do think it's going to be him. I've seen some compelling things that say it could be him, and then I don't think he makes it though. Like I think May or Osha one take him out. Still don't know that Soul makes it. um, I think it would make a lot of sense for everybody in that episode to not survive. And then Osha and May maybe take out the Sith guy and just kind of go their own way or something like that. And everything just kind of ends there, and we learn who the Sith Master is. Like the apprentice is dead, and they have to have. There's still got to be an acolyte though, so maybe someone else turns bad. I don't know. I don't think May's the acolyte. Do you?
She is current.
But do you think by the end of this, do you think she's the acolyte?
Sure, she is.
I don't think she is. That's a classic Star Wars thing too. The bad guy turning good.
She, with this really big focus on like balance, we've been seeing how the Jedi are out of balance, but the Sith are out of balance too, right? And so,
yeah,
I would think at some point this conclusion of the show will be like, that either way is not good, right? Like being completely committed to the dark side, right? Like revenge and anger and bitterness, all these things that come natural that you could lean into. You also can't just lean and ignore all those things and pretend they don't exist and put up the front of everything's good and everything's peachy, right? Because then you're not. We see that you're not really functional.
Yeah.
And so I think his downfall will come in the form of somebody like finding balance and being able to kind of find that place of like there's these things that are dark and broken that come natural, but you can still find balance with the good things, which is what the Jedi are supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think Kelnaka's story is going to be really interesting because
it's either going to be really interesting or really quick, one of the two.
I just think he's such an outlier from the other two that have been killed so far. Because I feel like Torben did something awful. I think Indara covered it up. Like just watching Kelnaka in the last episode, he seemed to have like a heart for the girls. Like he seemed.
That's true.
He seemed compassionate. Like he seemed friendly. And so I can see his guilt being from like he didn't stop something, right? And that's a very different sort of guilt than you covered something up. And so when he's confronted with May, like I'm really curious as to how that's going to play out because I'm not sure he did anything except maybe not help. So I don't know. I feel like that'll be really interesting because
that would cover all the stages of guilt
I feel
too.
Like he's a compassionate character. I don't feel like he's been malicious in any of this. I don't think he's like a prideful type character the way the others might have been. So I think his has the potential to be a really interesting resolution in terms of what is. With the other two, it's been what is May exploited to kill them? Like what will she exploit in him
to get him
to kill him? So
because she's like gonna get him. I think.
I think so. Yeah. No,
it's probably gonna take more than knives to get a Wookiee too.
Unfortunately, I don't think Soul lives. I think it'll be one of those things where it could have been like a wake-up call for the Order, but it isn't, right? Like it's just kind of one of those sad things where maybe it connects with some people like, hey, maybe we're off track here, but it never really becomes anything because it's already moved too far one way. I am curious as to where Vernestra is going to come back into this because
she does use the whip. Well, at some point they're all on the same planet with the Sith guy. Because the trailer shows that, so maybe there.
Call her in. I don't know.
Yeah, I just thought about this, completely random. But what if the way they like kind of resolve it all is Osha or May, one of the two, are the only ones left standing, and kind of like takes the fall on all of this, and then the Jedi don't believe her because they already thought it was her from the get go, or something along those lines, and so they just lock her up. Or
there's no Jedi to back up their story.
And so they just lock Osha up, and they're like, "Well, no, you don't have a sister." They think she's making stuff up, so they just.
Oh man, yeah, that would suck if her story ended up in Jedi prison because they don't believe her.
Yeah.
But would be fitting for the Jedi in some ways.
It would be paint them in a bad light. Yeah. You still got to have an acolyte though, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure where it goes, but there's still a lot of interesting twists. Like we thought we knew what was happening with the Bad Batch the whole time, and we ultimately didn't. True. Like we were like, oh well, yeah.
I could definitely see May and Osha being the last ones to survive. Whether they escape and just kind of try to get away from things, or whether something darker does happen. I think that would make some people unhappy if they're the two surviving ones. But
there will be some big reveal at the end of this, though. They do that in every bit of Star Wars. All the shows we've had a big reveal. Kenobi was probably the only one that didn't have a big reveal. I guess, right?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
But all the rest of them have a big reveal. Like the Mando has plenty of big reveals, like the Luke Skywalker, Book of Boba Fett had Luke Skywalker in it again. Then Ahsoka, you get Anakin. In Andor, you see the Death Star at the end. So like all of these have these big reveals, and so I think they're gonna give us something. Like if Leslie Headland's a Star Wars fan, she knows we like this stuff. So I think we are gonna maybe figure out who the master is, or if nothing else, like hear the master talk or something along those lines. I think it almost has to be that type of a thing.
Yeah, the more I see the little places where this is connected to a lot of other Star Wars lore, both canon and legend stuff, the more likely I am to think that the way this resolves will be connected to something big,
Yeah,
some individual or event that's of note. Um,
right.
just because it's done a pretty good job of connecting to all these other things and things that aren't as big, right? Little minor things.
Yeah.
Um, I could see
And it's
that
only
being really
87 years
nice.
before episode 1. We thought it was 100, but it's
Yeah,
only 87. So, like, not that that's a big jump, but, like, if your hang up was the timeline, it got a little bit more manageable for, like, a Tenebris
yeah.
or something like that.
And we've been talking a lot about this group of four masters, but like we still got to have like what happens with Jeki, like what happens with Yor. Like those are two big characters so far, who are two very different characters. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of one being the Padawan and one kind of being this foil to Soul right now. Like, how is their arc
Yeah.
gonna go? Like, there's a lot that still has to develop
Or will they even
between
have
those.
an
Like,
arc?
I feel like they've got to in some way. Um, maybe
Some
Yorn
degree.
specifically,
I don't know if they have enough
because
time to make it a deep one, unless it's multiple
yeah,
seasons.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know though, because I don't know that these guys survive. I don't know. Like I've said, I've always thought it would be interesting if the Acolyte show,
That's
if they did
true,
multiple
yeah.
seasons, if
That's
it
a good
just
point.
became about like a different Acolyte every season.
But yeah, I still, my biggest issue is trying to figure out how they wrap all this up, like, and make it fit. But we'll see how that happens, I guess.
But right now, it seems like they're treating Star Wars lore pretty faithfully. So I would have to think that they're aware that there's a big way this has to end to so that it doesn't, you know, mess things up further down the line. So I'll wait and see. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I mean it. We'll see. But I'm to this point, I think it's safe for us to both say we enjoyed it.
Yeah, I am
It
enjoying
was
it.
good. I think it's good. It all hasn't been perfect, but I think it's been good.
Agreed. I'm excited to see where we hop back. I'm assuming we hop back into the present next time, but I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, I would think so too. So let us know in the comments civilly um, what you've thought about this so far. I'm assuming if you hate it, you didn't make it 50 minutes into it, so awesome. But let us know what you think of The Acolyte. Next week, what we will do is kind of start going just an episode at a time since we'll be back on a regular schedule. And just, what do we think about the episode and where do we think it's going? And we'll do that all the way up through the finale. So otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining, and we will catch you guys next time.